Hey guys, how's it going? Today, the June update has just dropped, and the first thing I wanted to check out was this ship, the Tier 7 Pan-European destroyer, the Östergötland. Now, after the first few games, I can already tell that this is going to be one of my favorite destroyers at the tier to play. This ship is pretty nutty with its torpedo speed. The build that I am using, I have built it so that it can reach 93 knots, and even though the damage is fairly low, the torpedo speed and pretty much the amount of times that you can probably hit a battleship, especially that the torpedo reload is just over a minute for me. You can obviously get it down to a minute if you really want to, which is going to be really insane. These extremely fast torpedoes with narrow and super narrow spreads and an extremely fast torpedo reload are going to be a definite problem if you don't know how to dodge and turn and essentially predict where destroyers are and where torpedoes are coming from. Now, some people will ask, is this ship a torpedo boat or a gunboat? But I will tell you right now that it is a hybrid. The guns are actually very good. They are not quite as good as Friesland, but even when using subsurface venture and getting that 10% reload reduction and having the torpedo reload mod in the fourth slot, the main gun reload is still about 2.5 seconds, which is still above average for the tier. But in this game, like I said, I do have a torpedo build. I am using Stig Hansen Ericsson with Subsurface Venture and Space Fishy as a inspiration in order to get that 93 knots of speed. I also use Sims as the second inspiration, not Bay or Swersky, which is why my detection is relatively high. If I had gone the Swersky or Bay route, obviously my detection would be much better, but considering the torpedo range, I didn't think I would necessarily need the detection, especially since it's not a whole lot worse than some of the other destroyers at the tier, like the Fletcher at 5.4. Now, I launched these torpedoes at the Loyang in the smoke, and I'm assuming that he is running sonar. And I'm thinking that even if he did have sonar, the torpedo speed is just insane. And even if he was running his sonar and detected those torpedoes, they are so fast that I think they would still probably hit him. And I do end up getting a hit on the Loyang in his smoke, and now I know for a fact that I can take him in a gunfight, and he does leave his smoke and get spotted, and he is on a sliver of health at this point, and I will have no problem killing him off, which will just leave the Tirpitz and the Akizuki on this flank. Loyang keeps going around the island, gets spotted, and one salvo kills him off. Their Tirpitz is just hiding behind that island, and I can't help but think that if these two battleships, the Florida and Tirpitz, if they had been a bit braver and pushed out to support their destroyers, maybe their destroyers would be alive and they would have a much better chance of winning. But they just hid, and their destroyers are just dying because our ships are just pushing in extremely aggressively, and there's not a whole lot that their destroyers can do because they just don't have any support. And this Akizuki had reached and really has no escape, and he goes down, and the only thing left is this Akizuki. Now there's going to be a little low in the combat here, just going to be capping while that Tirpitz hides behind the island. So I thought I'd take this time to talk about other things in this update that you should be looking forward to. One of them is the SAP shells for Italian premium cruisers. Now, if their performance on PC in terms of the SAP shells are any indicator of what we should expect here, which I haven't tested out yet, they are going to be very good. And I think with the first few weeks and the first few months of these cruisers getting sap shells, for some players it will definitely seem like it's overpowered, but for those who understand the sap shell mechanics will definitely understand how to mitigate the damage. And I think it really will just take time for the player base to adjust, just like any of the ships or any new content that they release. Now I am slowing down because I'm thinking that the tier pits is reversing while our team is pushing out. I was kind of hoping our Miyoko was a little more aggressive and instead of hiding behind the islands had spotted him. But he does eventually get spotted and the tier pits is trying to make a full turn, and I am just predicting that he's trying to run behind that island in the top corner. So I just launched torps at that direction, and with the torpedo speed I am assuming that I will still be able to catch him. And going to the torpedo camera, which we will see quite a bit throughout this video, you can see just how fast these torpedoes are. And I zoom out to see how many torpedoes will actually be hitting him, and I'm able to land 3. So my prediction of him turning out and trying to go behind that island was correct. And now I can see on this other flank that the enemy has pretty much stomped our teammates while we stomped the enemy on our flank. So now we just need to head over to this side where they're kind of amassing at the corner of that island. And we can see that the Jean Bart is slowing down, probably just going to be sitting bow in at that corner. And we have 2 friendly battleships that's charging in to pretty much the rest of the entire enemy team. And I'm not sure why players just decide to charge into ships when they are simply outnumbered. I did post a Brandenburg video a couple days ago, but that does not apply here. And launching these torpedoes at the corner, I'm thinking I'm going to at least catch one of these ships. And the Caracciolo seems like he's just charging around the corner at full speed. And we're watching these torpedoes once again and how extremely fast they are. And the Caracciolo does go unspotted, but I'm thinking I'm still going to land a whole bunch of torps. And I'm able to land 5 of them. And usually with other destroyers, if you land 5 torpedoes, it would typically dev strike a battleship.
Engine boost
but
deactivated.
Since these destroyers' torpedo damage is so low, it does not actually do a whole lot of damage. He did lose quite a bit of health, and they have killed our battleships that's been YOLOing into them. So now I'm just going to try my best to help on this side and torp these battleships, but their Baltimore uses a radar on the other side of the island. He has been unspotted for some time, so I'm not quite sure where he is. If he's in the smoke and reversing towards Alpha, I dump a set of torps in hopes of catching him. And now I just need to try and create as much distance as possible, since these 2 battleships are just charging in towards the corner of the island where I am. Our Kagero is getting into the A-cap, and instead of following him, I have an idea to try and create a crossfire with torpedoes, because they will assume that I am in the cap with our Kagero, and possibly with them staying bow in towards the cap because they know where one destroyer is, I can launch torpedoes from another angle and possibly catch them. So where I'm going to go is just pretty much head north and see what ships that I can catch trying to chase our Kagero. And in a few seconds their Baltimore will actually come around the corner just barely outside of my detection. So trying to get away as fast as I possibly could was the right play. And we can see that the Baltimore is charging kind of towards the cap, which is pretty much what I was expecting. I do know that he just used his radar, so he won't have it back anytime soon. So all I'm gonna do now is just try to torpedo the Baltimore and maybe any of the other ships that decide to turn and go towards Alpha as well. So while these torpedoes are just heading there, some other things in this update that you should be looking forward to is concealment mod for battleships. This is something that I have been waiting for a very long time. Pretty much since the game came out, the tier 7 battleships did not have the concealment mod, which I think had a pretty big effect on ships getting spotted and pretty much how close the spawns were. The whole idea of battleships reversing at the start of the match, I think, had to do with them not having concealment mod, and over the years the spawns have been moved back, but ships still get spotted within the first 15 to 30 seconds, which isn't very enjoyable. I do think concealment mod will make the brawling battleships significantly better, mainly because you will stay undetected a bit longer before you get spotted, and you're that much closer for brawling. And ships like Massachusetts and Brandenburg and Bismarck, you're that much closer to getting within secondary range, which is a huge benefit for those ships. And for any other ship, really, it gives you a huge opportunity to disengage from cruisers HE spamming. If there's battleships and you're outnumbered on your flank, you can go undetected in between salvos. And with the shorter firing ranges of battleships, now doing that is a lot easier. And one of the best things is the Montana and Hurst no longer have detections beyond 15 kilometers. Now they sit around 13.7 and 13.8 kilometers, which makes those ships a whole lot more comfortable. And with concealment mod, I do feel like there's going to be a lot of complaining from the player base about their dispersion commanders not being accurate, because that skill does have a incoming fire dispersion debuff, and for people who start using concealment mod, which I think will be a lot of players, accuracy against battleships will now be more similar to that of cruisers. And now that all battleships will pretty much have concealment mod, running with scissors is going to become a lot more obsolete, because now they have the buff from concealment mod and camo, which will pretty much amount to 10% incoming fire dispersion debuff, which if you add running with scissors, another 6% dispersion debuff. Yeah, that's 16%, which is rough, and I might stop using running with scissors, at least until they figure it out. And I am gonna miss my Massachusetts build with running with scissors, but I'm sure I will see it again one day. Something else in this update is the campaign, the USS Black and the Independence. I do think it is kind of stupid that you have a choice between a tier 7 destroyer and a tier 5 carrier. I think it would have made a whole lot more sense to have two ships at the same tier to choose between, but that's just me. Something to think about when you're launching torpedoes at cruisers is if they're using something that lets them know if a ship's aiming at them with their main guns. So I was actually messing around with the aiming and switching between my torpedoes and main guns to kind of make that number flicker and make him think torpedoes are just being launched. And I do get him to turn slightly, but he does turn back. I think because I started watching the torpedoes, he kind of had an idea to hold his course. But we end up winning on points because we simply capped all the objectives and had it for so long. And a 3K game is pretty good. 123,000 damage is kind of average. Even though I had so many torpedo hits, the damage wasn't exactly impressive. But at the same time, this is the way that the destroyer will perform. Going over my commander build, Stig Hansen Ericsson, Subsurface Venture, and one of my inspirations is Space Fishy to get the torpedo speed as high as possible. Destroy or be destroyed, I think, is very important. These pan-European destroyers are fairly slow, so using that skill, or if using any of the other commanders like the universal one, using Velocis will help out immensely. But yeah, this ship is definitely one of the better destroyers at tier 7 if you're thinking about going down this line. I definitely think the Östergötland is very fun, and if you can work around the extremely fast and low damage torpedoes and the fairly fast reloading guns, this ship will definitely be one of your favorites as well. And there, looking at the stats, 93 knot torpedoes. But yeah, that's it for this video. Just wanted to showcase the new tier 7 destroyer a bit. I hope you guys enjoyed. Do leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. I will have some other videos for this update coming in the next few weeks or days. But until next time, aloha.